See, they went back to build the temple. They went back to build their city. And if they go and start their own nation, then they'll be obligated to do their own nation, and therefore they will stop giving you money. And that implied to us that the revenue being exacted against them was an act agreed upon the part of those who were doing it. And it's true. And sometimes taxation systems is nothing more than an expense agreed to bring wealth to an individual rather than to meet national needs. 1 Kings chapter 12. 1 Kings chapter 12. Richard, verses 9, 3 and 4. 1 Kings 12, 3 and 4. Verses 3 and 4.
And they sent and called him, and Jeroboam and all the congregation of Israel came and spake unto Rehoboam, saying, Thy father made our yoke grievous. Now therefore make thou the grievous service of thy father, his heavy yoke which he put upon us lighter, and we will serve thee.
Sounds like 2015, doesn't it? The scripture that we find in scripture that sometimes tax systems were very divisive. Yeah. And when they were abusive, they were oppressive, they were expression of greed. They became very divisive. And for example, in 1 Kings 12, just at the point, you remember when the kingdom of Israel split into two northern kingdoms and a southern kingdom, the scripture indicated that thy fathers made our yoke grievous. Now therefore make thou the grievous servant of thy father, and his heavy yoke which he put on us lighter, and we will serve thee. And the people said to Rehoboam, Jeroboam, and all the Boam boys, I like that. Your father overtaxed us, Solomon, and if you don't lower the taxes, we will not serve you. We will not vote you in at the next election. We're going to put in another woman for president. And the kingdom split over taxes. So unfair, so unrealistic. Tax systems, or even a protest against it, could be very divisive. Look at 2 Kings 23. And sometimes further in Scripture, we find that tax systems were designed to intimidate. 2 Kings chapter 23. It says, in verse 35, you want to read that, Serena?
I can try.
Jeroboam. Yeah, Jeroboam.
Gave the silver and gold to Pharaoh, but he taxed the land to give the money according to the commandment of Pharaoh. He exacted the silver and the gold of the people of the land, of every one according to his taxation, to give it unto Pharaoh Necho.
He taxed the land to give it to Pharaoh. And I mean, it was pure intimidation. Pharaoh had a hold on the neck of Jeroboam, and so he taxed his people to pay for protection from Pharaoh. You know, it's like the mafia coming down the street and asking you to pay for protection. It was nothing but intimidation. And so it says, Jeroboam exact the silver and the gold and the people of the land and everybody else to his taxation. In order to keep his relationship good with Pharaoh. So we admit that even in the Bible, even in the record of Scripture, there are times when taxation was oppressive, times when it was greedy, times when it was divisive, times when it was intimidating. But nonetheless, And the Bible recognizes all of these possibilities, because I just read you places where they're recorded in history and scripture that taxes was oppressive. And in spite of that, Romans 13, there's no parentheses. And God recognizes there will be times when there will be inequality, and when their use will not be what you want your money to go. Why am I paying taxes for money that I don't want them to pay taxes for? We talked about that earlier. It is almost impossible for young couples to be married, because if you have a baby out of wedlock, I'll help pay for it. Government pays to help the child that the mother got involved with the man and she had the child, and it also helps pay for the mother's education. She can get a degree, and it's an incentive, but I'm paying for that. She don't pay a lick of it. And that couple things, which I'm glad that they can get some help as well. Now, the Bible's teaching on this whole matter of taxation brings us all the way back to Genesis chapter 41. Let's take a moment to look at that particular passage in chapter 41 and track it way back through time, and I hope familiar territory. But in Genesis chapter 41 and verse 34, and we find the introduction of the first basic national tax. First basic tax. First basic national tax. There is a federal tax. Nothing new. It happened in Genesis. In the beginning of time, there was a federal national tax. Nothing is new. Maybe it's where they got the idea. Income, property tax, personal tax. Let me give you background. Pharaoh had a dream. Pharaoh had a dream that there would be in his mind, 7 thin cows in his dream, and then there would be 7 fat cows in his dream. He had a weird dream. And in his dream, the 7 thin cows did what? Ate the 7 fat cows. And then in his dream, there were 7 thin ears of grain. And they devoured 7 fat ears of grain. And Pharaoh was completely lost as to what in the world does this mean? How do we interpret the dream? In those days, everybody had dreams, and they would come, Daniel's day, you recall, and they had books on dreams. And so what they did, if a person had a dream, they recorded the dream and kind of recorded their interpretation of that dream. But there was a man who could do that, who could translate that dream, and that man's name was Joseph. And Joseph had been sold into slavery in Egypt by his brothers, and the Lord set that all up so that Joseph could be there when he was needed. And it was known that Joseph was an interpreter of dreams. And so Joseph interpreted the dream, and ultimately the result of the interpretation was, if he was made the prime minister of Egypt, which is right where God wanted him, so he could help his own brothers and his own people as the story is unfolded. And we've seen that a lot. But Joseph interpreted the dream by saying that the 7 skinny cows eating the 7 fat cows, and the 7 thin grain eating the fat ones, indicated that there would be, first of all, 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of famine. That began to unfold in verse 29. Now you want to look at that for a moment. Verse 29. Genesis, what, 41?
Yes.
Behold, there comes 7 years of great plenty through all the land of Egypt, and there shall arise after that 7 years of famine. So that the indication of the dream. Now, to deal with this, what are we going to do? How are we going to face the preparation for the 7 years of famine? Verse 34. The plan is indicated. Let Pharaoh do this. Let him appoint officers over the land and take up what? The 5th part of the land into 7 plenteous years. 20% of everybody's grain, of everybody's agriculture profit, everyone's farming profits was taking up to a personal taxation system. To be laid in store for the use in the 7 years of famine. And this was the initiation of the first personal taxation system in the nation. Sort of like Social Security to some degree. I'm glad that in spite of my stupidity, how much money do you have in savings? How many of you have $1,000 in savings? How many of you got $1,000 in savings? Richard, you have $1,000 in savings, don't you?
No, I haven't.
You have it in savings, huh?
I don't have that much in savings right now,
But you have some other.
yeah.
You have some other DVDs, ABCs, USS.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So you have nothing in savings. Now, my question is, how many of you receive a check every month? Right? Now, that's called Social Security. Our welfare, our Welfare Disability Act. I mean, you can find a way to getting it, but you get it. That helps out. We sure don't get child support, do we? Our daddy support. So I'm saying is, I'm glad that the fact is, I'm glad that I have a little Social Security. It's not much, but the Social Security provides to pay for all my taxes and my insurance. So, in other words, if we don't save it, we'd be dead. So they decided that people are not going to save money, so we're going to have to save it for them, and then we're going to have to tax the people that we work for, and they're going to pay half of what we pay. So you didn't put all that money in it, you can only put half of what's in there. Your employee paid the rest of it. Okay. Now, I want you to know that this was a pagan nation. This is not Israel. This is Egypt, and Egypt does not worship God. It's a pagan nation, but nonetheless, it was an institution of God brought by God's choice servant, Joseph, to attend Pharaoh. Look down in verse 53.
What chapter are you in, Charles?
41.
40. Okay, I thought you said
Genesis 41, right?
41.
Verse 53 says, look at it. And the 7 years of plenteous that was in the land of Egypt was what? Ended. And the 7 years of famine began to come according as Joseph had said, and the famine was all over the land, not just in the land of Egypt, but all the land of Egypt there was what?
Bread.
Bread. Well,